Gotcha. Got it. All right. Let's go ahead and jump in. So some of you have been asking me, like, how did this happen? Like the modeling series. And I'm going to give a harken back here a little bit. So this became a thing during COVID. So I was in this office at the Biltmore. I turned half of this into a studio, half into an office, got the ring light and the microphone and all that stuff. And because I couldn't go out and do live events, and this became kind of the place that I engaged business. I mean, probably like a lot of us too. So I started reaching out to people I worked with, people I coached, people I knew as friends, athletes, and said, hey, I'm going to do this thing called the modeling series. And I learned modeling a long time ago is the duplication of success. What are you doing to be successful? So it could have been a doctor. It could have been an athlete talking about discipline, could have been a high level sales performer. It didn't really matter. I didn't discriminate. I wasn't looking for like somebody famous. I was looking for someone maybe you did not know and to be able to highlight that person. So little about Kevin. Kevin's in my reset of the modeling series. I haven't done one of these modeling series in a while. I've done some of these privately or within companies, as some of you know, but to bring one out to our peer group or our VIP group, I haven't done one in a while. So it's kind of nice to have my friend Kevin. Kevin, you can see in the background, Hub, it was on the marketing. In case you didn't know what Hub was, Hub is one of the biggest insurance companies in the world. I'll let him brag on that a little bit later. Him and I met January of last year. So it's coming up on a year and a half. And we had, it was an event. I was a guest speaker down in Southern California. And I laugh at that because I started off that meeting in January. ChatGPT had only been out for 2 months, and I did a show of hands, 150 people in the room. How many people know what ChatGPT is? Like
Nobody.
nobody, like five hands went up.
Yeah.
And of course, now 100% of the hands would go up. And Kevin was one of those hands that did not go up. So he came up to me at the end of the event and said, hey, man, you're speaking to me, the next level stuff, knocking the rust off, doing some of these things on LinkedIn. We got to engage each other. And that's what we've done. Now we've become dear friends last year and a half. And it's an honor. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on today. So I always start off.
Likewise. My pleasure.
I always start off with the same question. It's the name of my book. What's your story? So tell us the abbreviated version, man. Tell us your background. How'd you get to where you are? Tell these people who you are.
Well, I've been an insurance broker for 41 years and, pretty much started right out of college. I was playing baseball, and when baseball was done, I thought I got to go do something for a living. And I was 22, and believe it or not, most people say, hey, I accidentally fell into insurance. I did not intend to go into insurance, but that was not me. My parents' insurance guy, he was pretty impressive. He always rolled up in a new car, and he coached baseball in his spare time. And I said, how do you work and coach baseball? And he told me, he says, hey, I make my own hours. I do my own thing. And I said, I want to be that guy. So, a friend of mine went over to Allstate years and years ago, and he says, hey, you should come over here. It's a pretty cool gig. And so I did that for a couple of years, writing auto and homeowners and small business policies, kind of the Main Street thing. But there was so much we couldn't do. And we'd say, call a broker. And I go, I want to be these broker guys. They're getting all the business. And so, I went to an agency and trained in an Aetna program for a couple of years and did the same thing, still did auto and homeowners and small business. And one component was doing estate planning for business owners. And so, we're helping them fund their buy-sell agreements using life and disability insurance. And one guy finally says to me one day, he says, hey, Kevin, what do you know about health insurance? I said, what's to know? It's 250 deductible, 80/20. There's, 100 companies. Yeah, give me your health insurance. I'll take care of you. And pretty soon that became the dominant part of my practice from 1987 forward. 1992, I started my own gig. I got tired of working for other people and did that for 14 years. And, as things started combining in the early 2000s, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. It was either buy or get bought. But you had to survive and adapt because the larger agencies were coming out with lots of tools and value adds, and you were going to get eaten alive if you couldn't play in that landscape. And so eventually I merged with a larger company, and the short version of the story is eventually wound up at Hub 6 years ago. And so here we are today.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So when you and I talk, and we talk a lot about business, of course, we also talk about life. And I made this promise right up front in the marketing is you would call it your 8 habits. And that's part of modeling, the duplication of success, the famous quote that I always use, success leaves clues. So if you don't mind, I want to take this rich history that you have, not only in insurance, but as an entrepreneur. So I think that thinking that in these principles in 2 regards, if you're listening, if you're an entrepreneur and you own your own company, these apply. This also applies if you're in the insurance industry. So I wanted to take these kind of broader principles that these are yours, these aren't mine. So,
Hmm.
but I want you to give these to me because I was really impressed when I basically asked you what are some of the things that you would see as your success habits. And what do you know, that night, bingo, you send over 8 of these and you just rattled them so congruently. And I want you to share these if you don't mind. So let's take it from the top. The number
Okay.
one you shared is have a plan. Now, of course, right? Everyone, I got to have a plan, but you got to bring
Hmm.
some juice into this. What's that mean to you?
Well, so going back to my Allstate days, they talked about, or actually it was more the Aetna training, and they said, hey, if your goal is to have 100 new customers a year, and obviously you're talking about auto and homeowners, they talked about the rule of 5,000. In order to get there, you got to have 5,000 prospects to get 5,000 suspects to get 500 prospects to write X number of policies, and at the end of the year, you'd come out with that number. So you had to really touch a large number of people, and so I never thought about it in those cases. They said, hey, well, when you're out there and you're brand new, just write whatever you get a hold of and throw it against the wall and see what sticks. Well, that wasn't working for me, and so I realized, okay, I need to apply some numbers to this. As an athlete, coming out of college, you're kind of thinking of, you equate it to hours of practice and how many reps and all that kind
Mhm.
of stuff. And so it made sense to me. Yeah, now theory versus application, it was a little bit harder to apply because, having the discipline, I knew guys who were cold calling warriors back in those days, and they do 150, 200 dials a day. And that wasn't my thing. My thing was, okay, how can I get from A to B most quickly? And that we didn't have social media then. We didn't have a way to reach tens, hundreds, thousands of people in a day with a great post.
Yeah.
So it truly was pick up the phone, smile and dial, or you know, find another way to reach a bunch of people
Yeah.
in a short amount of time.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things about nowadays. Everyone does have like the LinkedIn, and we'll get to that in a minute. LinkedIn, ChatGPT, social media, Instagram. So you can touch so many people so quickly with a post or something. So it becomes more accessible. It's easy to touch more people, but people still don't have a plan. I hear this all the time. You're like, oh yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Oh, that's great. What's your plan? Oh, I'm on Instagram. Oh, well, what's your plan? So I think no matter what mediums you're using to push your personal brand, which Kevin and I talk about, personal branding is such a big thing. But if you don't have a plan in each of these regards, you're not flying with a plan, period. Right.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. So you talk about be a part of a COI. I know that's your term, center of influence.
Hmm.
I call them spheres. I call them hubs. No pun
Yeah.
intended. People that are connectors.
Hmm.
I heard a speaker one time. This is gosh, about 5 years ago before COVID, and they were studying algorithms like on HubSpot, LinkedIn, all these different, things that we use in CRMs.
Hmm.
And they could literally study the people who had the biggest connector groups are the ones that got the most referrals, leads, and most activity on social media. So this is true not only in social media, but this is true in life. So speak on this one.
Yeah. Well, and so when at the end of my last segment there, I talked about how do I get to more people in a short period of time, because this smiling down thing, it's just the first of all, the rejection is crushing. You make 10 dials and 9 of them say, "Don't call me back," and rude comment to follow, and that's soul sucking. It really does take a lot of energy to put up with that and keep moving forward. And so I'd say center of influence or sphere of influence. I went to these meetings, Chamber of Commerce in the early days, and that now, if you want a lot of small stuff, that's still a good place. If you're an auto and homeowners person, or you're a plumber, that's great.
Right.
But in our business, volume is king. And so I thought, well, what kind of business do I want to write? So in the beginning, I joined the Electrical Contractors
Mhm.
Association, several different construction associations, and I'd go to their dinners, and we'd promote the company. And if they had a trade show, we'd have a table. And pretty soon I got to know all these people, and I was doing what I was doing back then, which was helping them fund their buy-sell agreements. Everybody was all over that. Estate planning was a big bug, and then the health insurance. And so it was like 1, 2, 3, knock them down, 1, 2, 3, knock them down. And so I just repeated that process with whatever association I was involved in, going right up to today. I don't know if we should skip ahead, but I mean, I've been a member of Vistage and a type of executive group
Yeah.
where I'm in there with other C-level executives, getting to know them and eventually building their trust. And then, you know, saying, hey, Mike, who are you working with? Is there a
Mhm.
way you and I could work together in some form or fashion? I really enjoy hanging out with you, spending time with you, and I think I could be of help, if the opportunity ever comes up. And oftentimes I get the comment, "Oh, we thought you would never ask," you
Yeah.
know. But I'm not the person that's going to meet you and shake your hand and go, "Hey, who writes your insurance?" It's just not. That's not me.
Well, you've heard the old adage that you are who you hang around. You know
Mhm,
that one. What do you take the average of the five people you spend the most time with, and that includes your
mhm.
spouse and your friends.
Yeah,
And this has been studied. You can take this beyond us. You're the character right in the middle, right in the middle of that group. So it's whether you're playing with people who are entrepreneur minded, people that are connector minded. Visage. I'm a Visage speaker. I know you and I've talked about that. Get
mhm,
brought into chapter meetings once a month to speak to groups as a speaker, and it's really neat to see that people they come authentic about their wounds and their pains and their stories. But if you're not around
yeah,
those people in the first place, it's what are you doing, right? All right. So
100%.
I always talk about one of the six human needs is contribution. So we're not going to go through the six human needs analysis. Growth is one of them. Certainty is one of them, but contribution is a big one. I learned this lesson the hard way when I worked for Anthony Robbins. My first 6 months on the job, he said, "You're coming from the wrong human need. You're trying to be selfish and significant. This is about you. This is the Mike show. People don't care
Yeah,
about you. People don't care where you went to college. People don't care where you went to law school. They don't care about your GPA. They don't care about
mhm.
any of that stuff. They want to know what's in it for them." Right. So you talk about helping people. Talk a little about that, helping others, putting people ahead of yourself.
Yeah, I have a couple of ways I do that. I mean, I've been on a number of boards and tied to charities that help children, and that's always just been kind of
Mhm.
uh, a heartstring with me. Having had a nephew who they thought he had leukemia, and he was in the PEDS ICU at Loma Linda University, and my own son came down with bacterial meningitis, and he wound up in the peds ICU at Loma Linda again, years later, and it was the scariest experience ever. But they were so caring, and they did such a phenomenal job. And I thought, how do I get the word out? How do I help these people help others? And so I got involved in their foundation board, doing fundraising, which isn't as hard as you might think. And then I was on the board for several other nonprofits in a fundraising capacity. And you get to do the fun things like play in their golf tournaments and go to their galas and what have you. But it's a great way to bring people in and show them what these folks do for their community and why it's so vital. Um, Otherwise, it's just definitely giving back in the form of uh, monetary donations and something you believe, but being a part of something you believe. Cystic fibrosis is another one that's close to me because there's family ties there. And so it's
Yeah.
like whatever lights your fire. And then it also speaks to what we just touched on a minute ago was you're getting in front of a large group of people. A lot of them are entrepreneurial minded like you are, and they you have common bond.
Hmm.
So you're there for the same reasons. And like you said, the people that hang together, the 5 degrees or whatever you want to call it of hanging together, well, they're going to be people that you're involved with on the regular if they're outside of your family. And
Yeah.
I've made some really good friendships that still last to this day, from some of those events. I might not be on the boards anymore because they rotate you out to bring
Yeah.
new
Of course.
people in, but I'm still involved on the periphery, going to their events and whatnot.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things that helped me personally, not just in business, that was a secondary, tertiary benefit, was getting truly involved with nonprofit. Not because it was the cool thing to do or be a part of that big ball that all the hitters go to and being
Mhm,
seen, but having a cause that you feel strongly about. Like you mentioned a couple things in your family that was emotional for you. For me,
mhm,
I have a master's of compassion. That's one of our workbooks. We have a curriculum, 10-week curriculum for teenagers that are struggling. It's a resiliency program. That means a lot to me because I have two sons and they're struggling with just being teenagers. So it
right.
wakes me up every day. But I challenge a lot of people out there when I look at LinkedIn profiles and I don't see that. There's a spot in LinkedIn, you know that. What nonprofits are you involved with?
Mhm,
And my rule number one is don't judge, be curious. But I'm intensely curious when I don't see somebody involved with a nonprofit
mhm.
at some level, because that giving back piece is such a good thing for the heart and the soul, but also for the network. And I think that brings me to number four. Number four is authentic. I mean, you got to be authentic. I've been using that word for a long time. I don't remember when I first started it, but what does authentic mean to you?
Well, like I said, when I talked about the, you know, not liking cold calling. You know, you tell your district manager, I hate cold calling. I found another way that's more effective. And they were like, hands up, no, 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 don't veer from the plan. You know, you got to do it this way. Well, you know, I I was just being vulnerable and taking a chance that I was going to get, reprimanded for not following the directions. But that's part of being authentic. And then, the other part of being authentic is, be unafraid to be you, the
Hmm.
real you. Be
Yep.
vulnerable, I guess, is the term of the day. Don't be afraid to share your story. You and I, in the year and a half we've known each other, I've shared some pretty deep things with you.
Hmm.
And being part of Vistage, you hear guys who are CEOs of big companies. I've seen them break down and cry,
Yeah.
telling
Yeah.
stories about things that they're going through with their family. And so I would just say be shamelessly unafraid to be the real you. And if people don't like you because of that, well, then you're probably not hanging with the right people. And
Yeah.
so, um, I mean, you can overshare, don't get me wrong, but you can kind of feel the room. And when it's your turn to speak,
Yeah.
and you've got something on your heart and you need to share it,
I,
you
I
know.
always like, I always like using that as a filter when people ask you, "Hey, how are you doing?"
Hmm.
And I say, "Do you really want to know?
Hmm.
Do you really want to know?" And they usually go, "Hey, man, I'm just trying to make conversation. I'm not, I really don't want to know." Because I'm
Okay.
thinking you don't want to know, man. I'm having a rough week. Things are tough at home, kids.
Uh-huh.
You don't want to know, but you do. You get a sense in that filter moment where you're like, okay, this person really cares. Like they genuinely want to know. Hey, tell me about your kids. Hey, tell me about what's it like, living in Scottsdale. It's 115 degrees all the time. You can tell when it's just not idle chit chat, but somebody authentically wants to know. And I think that's a filter we all have. But sometimes we turn it off because we get so stuck in, oh my gosh, is somebody asking me about my favorite topic, which is
Hmm.
myself. So I'm just
Hmm.
going to start talking all about myself. Rather than that, stop and say, does this person really care? Do they really think about the things that I'm going to say, and do they remember those kind of things that I'm going to say? And that kind of brings me to the next one. You talk about number 5, ask questions about others to learn about them before you talk about yourself. So that leads right
Uh-huh.
into that. I mean,
It does.
that's not easy. That's not an easy thing. Speak to me on that.
So, I'm sitting in a Vistage meeting one day, and it's always nice to get affirmation that the things you do are the right things. Sometimes we stumble into, without being formally trained, you know, the behaviors that successful people practice. And so I'm sitting in a Vistage meeting, and this guy named Boaz Rauschweiger comes in, and he has this thing about the 5 questions. He starts every conversation rather than launching into, "Hi, I'm Kevin from Hub, and we're the fifth largest insurance agency in the world, and we're awesome," and blah 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 blah. Show up and throw up, as they
Mhm.
say. He, he said his first thing is like, "Hi, Mike, it's nice to meet you." And he says, "So, I have a question for you, if you don't mind. Have you lived in Phoenix your whole life?" So he asks you where you're from originally.
Yeah.
And then he asks you about your family status. And then he says things like, if money was no object, would you be doing what you're doing today, or would you be doing
Wow.
something else? So, I
That's
mean,
good.
you're getting 5 questions deep into this person's life. And not once have you said, how many employees do you have? What's your gross annual revenue? You're getting to know that person. And how many kids do you have? And what are their names? And,
Yeah.
and you learn he's got 2 kids in college, and he's paying 2 college tuitions, or they got a special needs child, and but they're the light of their life, and here's why. And
Yeah.
you get to hear all these personal stories, and you're there for 45 minutes. And I say, if they'll give you 20 minutes, they'll give you 2 hours
Yeah.
if they really like you. And you're 40 minutes into the meeting and you haven't once talked about business. And Boaz talked about this one interview he had with a business person, and he was from mainland China. And he said at the end of the talk, he said, "You honor me with your questions." And he says, "I want to work with somebody like you."
Wow. That's a powerful
And
statement.
yeah.
That's a powerful statement. I love it when I ask people like authentically, "Hey, how are you?"
Hmm.
And when they say, "Hey, thanks for asking,"
Hmm.
like right out of the gate, you know that that person really genuinely appreciates you asking that question, whether it's they've had a rough day or everyone's been telling you how great they are and they just want to talk for the first time that day. But just having that moment where they stop and acknowledge the fact that, hey, we're engaging in a conversation is so powerful. I know you talk about being original, and original and authentic to me are a little different. I know, I think you
Mhm.
see this a little the same way, right? Authentic is already one thing you've talked about, but being original. Now,
Mhm.
this is also going to tie into LinkedIn, which we'll get to in a minute. So, how do you be original? I mean, we've all heard it, right? You just go on Instagram, you
Right.
just scroll through
Right.
social media, you've seen it all. How do you be original in this day and age?
Well, for me, being original is you're differentiating yourself from everybody else that does what you do. Because let's face it, I mean, we've all been sitting in a chair across a desk from somebody, and they want you to hire them to clean your carpets, paint your house, whatever, or whatever it might be. And you're going, well, I already have Mike, and he's awesome. Why would I fire Mike to hire you?
Yeah.
And so I've got to basically go in there and give them, I guess we call it our value proposition. What makes us different? Because bigger isn't always better, right? Sometimes bigger is just bigger. I got that quote from a friend of mine years ago, and he's right. You could be the biggest insurance agency on the planet or the biggest whatever on the globe, but does that necessarily make you the best at what you do? And
Mhm.
what differentiates you from all the people in your space? And because it can't just be lowest price, best service,
Mhm.
every time, because obviously that's not going to be applicable 100% of the time. And so being original and saying, well, here's how we attack it. Here's our process, and here's what we do. And maybe it's really similar to what someone else does, but my story has to resonate with you. And I'm not afraid to say, hey, listen, we're here to find out if we can even help you.
Mhm.
We don't even know that yet.
Yeah.
I think that's original. I mean, among salespeople, most of us are too quick to get to yes, and I'm perfectly calm, cool, and collected as I can be in those discussions and saying, "Hey, I'm not here to sell you anything today. I don't even know if I can help you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, what keeps you awake at night, and if that's something we can help you with."
Yeah. That's one of my
And
favorite questions, man. What keeps you awake
yeah,
at night? That's a big one. I'll tell you that
yeah,
one of the things that help. I mean, you guys all know my friends out there. I'm a journal guy. I have multiple journals. When I walk into a meeting and I open this thing up to a blank page and I date the page, and that's all I have sitting in front of me. No PowerPoint, no tablet, no leave behinds. And I pre-frame that and I say, you know what, I'm a big note taker, I'm an active listener, and what you say is important. I'm gonna ask you some questions if you don't mind. I'll get to know who you are. We'll see if I've earned the right to tell you about what I've done. And at the end, if we want to talk about what I do, great. I certainly have them in my bag here, some marketing pieces. That's why they're called leave behinds, right? But how many people actually walk in with a blank journal page and right in front of that person fill up a full page? And you do it authentically. You're not sitting there with your head down like you're interviewing them, but you just do it very subtly. You sit back and you go, well, Kevin, let me ask you a question. What makes you happy? Like, what puts a smile on your face? And you're like, what's a smile on my face? I don't know. Being around my kids, watching a baseball game. But I got you thinking for the moment. I ask you, what keeps you up at night? Man, that's a tough question for some people. But that in and of itself, I think, and I think you would agree that that's original. That's original. That's
100%.
authentic,
Yeah.
true, because you genuinely want to know. It's not a sales technique, but
Mhm.
you're asking something that's original. Just the form of asking the question is original because the natural tendency is for people to show up and throw up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard not to do. Even as many years as I've been doing it, it is sometimes hard not to do
Yeah.
when you're just so excited. But you got to remember, hey, I'm not here to push a product. I'm here to solve a problem,
Yep. That's
or
it.
fill a need, and we need to find out what that is first before we can even.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many of my contemporaries, and I talk to them about what they're doing, and it's just like always lead with this, always lead with this, and it's like, well, yeah, I know they mean well, but
Yeah.
everybody can't possibly benefit from the same solution.
No, it's so good. That's so good. Uh, we're getting to the last ones here. Seven, number seven, always keep learning. Now, my frame on this is I learned this like leaders or readers. So like, whether you're podcasting, reading books, reading things online anymore, it keeps me sharp. That's what I do. I call it micro learning now, right? You
Yeah.
watch something in 10 or 15-minute snippets rather than sit there and mindlessly scroll. So how do you do it? I mean, it's not only learning techniques and skills and how to stay sharp, but you're influencing other parts of your mind. Tell me about what your belief about it is.
Well, so You and I have talked about like what are you reading lately, and I tell you, I used to be a voracious reader. I mean, just like plow through a novel and wouldn't stop till I finished it. I read Steve Jobs' book when I was on vacation one year, and my wife said, "When are you going to put that down and jump in the water?" Because we were in Hawaii, and I'm just enjoying myself sitting on the beach reading a book and having a good time. But so nowadays, well, that's where you come in, my friend. I mean, you're part of my learning process. I realized I was woefully deficient in LinkedIn and how to promote myself, use it properly. And just having a profile was basically all I had going on there for the longest time. But in terms of snippets of knowledge, I mean, I've you turned me on to Gary Vaynerchuk, and I
Oh
watch
yeah.
some of these guys in the TED Talks, and I pick up really valuable information by actually stopping, reading, and looking at the content. I like the micro stuff because it's easier to hold your attention, and it's
Hmm.
harder these days to devote um, a lot of time to reading a book unless it's maybe driving in the car. Um,
Hmm.
so, but I realize at my age, a lot of guys are just kind of mailing it in. They're
Yeah.
they're winding down their careers and they're going, yeah, I've done enough and I don't want to do any more. Well, I'm not there yet. I still enjoy the hunt. I still enjoy bringing a new business there. And I realize unless I'm using the latest techniques and what's most effective, then uh, I'm behind. I'm not relevant. I'm
Yeah.
just not gonna resonate with these people if I show up with you know, my Sony Walkman to record the meeting, or something like that. And so I love technology. I'm not the best at using it, but I've got people around me who are phenomenal at it. But to me, LinkedIn was the one true untapped resource that I just wasn't taking advantage of. And the benefit of that is I've gotten to
Yeah.
know you on
Yeah.
a very personal level as well as a professional level. But it's also benefited my clients. And I've picked up, I'm not lying when I say at least 100 grand of revenue each year for the last 2 years since I've been using the techniques you gave me, and I hired a
Wow.
team to do some marketing for me to just get my name out there. And so I've gotten hundreds and hundreds of contacts, and out of those hundreds and hundreds of contacts has come about 250,000 dollars of revenue, which if you're a broker in the business, that's not a small chunk of revenue. We try and do at least that every year. um, and that equates to probably $10 million in sales, as
Right.
some people would look at it in terms of the premium involved. But uh, I
What?
couldn't be in the higher echelons of the producers at Hub if I wasn't using this technology. So
Yeah.
but if I hadn't learned that, I'd still be scraping it out the old-fashioned way. Going back to my centers of influence that I've wrung out to dry, and I'd be
Yeah.
scratching my head going, "What could I do? What could I do?" If
Yeah.
if
That.
I hadn't met you and started using these techniques, that's where I'd be.
Yeah, and the thing is about these, they're not. It's a mindset. It's a technique. We get to the chat. Thank you. I got Andrew. I got some other questions. We'll get to that at the end. We're gonna do open Q&A at the end. But when it comes to the LinkedIn, the biggest thing is getting out of the way of yourself. Getting out of the way of yourself. You know you're smart. You
Hard to
know what
do.
you look like. And this cracks me up. I did an event, and my friend Chad out there will remember this. I did a live meeting for those guys in Chicago, and one of the teammates said, "Oh, I just don't like the way I look on camera." And we all laughed. We're like, "This is how you look to us. Like this is what
Yeah.
we see every day. It does not change because it goes into this medium. You don't go from this to this, and it's a 180. So you don't like what you see. This is what we see. So get out of your way and put yourself on the camera. Okay, I don't love my voice either, but guess what? This is what people hear. And if I'm not willing to put it out there because I'm in my own way, that's going to be the biggest inhibitor to taking that step. We'll get to that in a Q&A too. I want to hit that in a minute. And my last one, and I laughed when I saw this for the first time. You said number 8, have a life outside of work. 100% agree. 100% agree. But I remember I interviewed 3 CEOs at our church years ago. CEO Petco, previous at Motorola, and the third one I can't remember off the top of my head. And it was a panel. So I was the facilitator, and we had open entrepreneurs. So it's probably 35 to 50-year-olds asking open-ended questions of the CEOs, part of our community. And a bunch of the questions came in and said, like much like the open chat, talk to us a little bit about work-life balance. Now, all of them laughed at the same time. In unison, they laughed. So, of course, I had to jump on this. They go one by one. I remember Mr. Francis from Petco. He started off and he goes, guys, it's an aspiration. It's an aspiration. You're never going to get there. You're never going to wake up and go, drop the mic. I am perfectly balanced. I'm good. Every day you're going to struggle with yourself. Every week you're going to struggle with yourself. You should spend more time with your kids, more time with your family. No one's going to be on their deathbed going, damn, I wish I would have worked more. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying that belief is right or wrong, but that belief is out there. But how do you reconcile that? Because I agree with you. You got to have a life outside work, but where do you draw the lines? What's your belief?
So to your point, the struggle is real. Okay. It's ongoing and it's easier sometimes than it is at others. I'll take it back to when I was training with the Aetna and one of the execs died at his desk. And I remember a guy saying, nobody ever died wishing they spent more time at work. And because this guy was putting in 12, 14-hour days. And he was actually in his office with the door closed for the entire day. And nobody had realized because they figured he has his door closed. We don't want to disturb him. This is in the 80s. And so somebody finally knocked at the end of the day and they found him and he was gone.
Wow.
And that kind of resonated with me. It's like nobody ever does die wishing they spent more time at work. So it's just grabbing the opportunities when you can. I take 3 weeks of vacation a year, never all at once, which I've been threatening to do for years, but I haven't done it.
Mhm.
I got a lot of clients that do it. I got one client just got back from Europe. He was there for a month. I mean,
Wow.
what an idyllic vacation, a whole month out of the year and you're just gone.
Wow.
I don't know how any of us on here would cope with that. I'm sure we all have the resources, but there's still that voice in the back of your head said, man, they're nothing without you, or they're not the same without you, or so it's really difficult. So getting away for a week, 10 days, I make it a priority. It's just my wife and myself, our kids are grown. Uh, and so we don't have to worry about babysitters, placing the dogs is the toughest thing we have to do. But,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but we do have to be strategic about it. It's got to be the time of the year where it's not Q4 or it's not Q2. So basically it's July and August are the only times where we can pretty much without consideration take off for a couple of weeks. So you just find your sweet spot and you stick with that. I mean, that's what's worked for us. But it's also when you say you're going to do something, you do it. Because I
Yeah.
remember thinking about canceling a couple trips years back and it met with disapproval and you're going, you know what, you just got to make it happen.
Yeah.
If
It's so
if you're
true.
not committed to it, you'll always find a reason to change it, cancel it,
Yep.
modify it. And so I've just stuck to the plans and we make plans as far in advance as we can so that and things are going to happen, things are going to come up.
Yep.
And I wouldn't lie to anybody here on this webinar and say I've never brought my laptop with me on vacation
Yeah.
or I never check my phone. But if I do, it's like, okay, it's 5 o'clock there. I better look and see if anything's burning. And
Yep.
I take 15, 20 minutes, go through the day's activity if I can, and just say, I'll send a message to somebody saying, hey,
Yeah. It's
if
so
I were
true.
there, I'd do this. But if you've got good people, they know what to do when you're not there. And
Oh,
that's really the
absolutely.
key to being successful
Yeah.
is in that work-life balance is you've got to make sure that you trust your team or you got to learn to trust your team. Maybe they have earned your trust, but you just can't quite let go. I
Yeah.
would say the higher up you go, the more that becomes an issue of letting go. And
Hmm.
that's a skill that you have to develop. And
Yep.
it took me years to develop it. It really did. But
Yeah. I don't vacation well. I gotta be honest with
mm,
you. I suck at it.
yeah,
I'm going on one soon here, and I have two books that I'm gonna actually read, not like on the like listen to. I'm gonna actually read the books, and I made little like mini goals of what I want to do. So we'll see how I do. But I hear you loud and clear. You got to commit to it, and you got to do it because you're right. No one's gonna look back and say, man, I wish I worked harder. All right, I'm gonna transition a little bit because we brought this up, and I'm gonna tie this in with a couple questions with LinkedIn. Let's pivot to LinkedIn. So I know you've been putting your brand out there and
mhm.
you've seen growth. I mean, clearly you've mentioned that, but a couple of questions are, how did you first, get out of the way of yourself? You had to gain the confidence to do it, number one. And then two, like what's your kind of your strategy around how you're using your posts? If you could share it briefly.
So I found the posts that are the most successful, and it's kind of mind blowing when you find this out. But it's when you share your personal story, when you talk about what you're doing, what you're going through. And so for me, it was talking about about the time I met you. I started going back to the gym and working out because I was in horrible shape, and
Mhm.
I thought, how long am I going to wait to get in the best shape of my life? Because let's face it, you hit 60 and it's like, all right, how much time do you have left?
Right.
And I don't mean to be morose, but it's true. It's like, okay, you dream of getting in great shape again, but it takes work and it takes effort, and it takes planning, because you've got a career and you got a family and you got other commitments. And so for me, sharing my story about where I was on my fitness journey, I couldn't believe the number of responses I was getting, the number of impressions. And it
Mhm.
was like the more personal stuff I talked about in between talking about business acumen and what we do, and how we're trying to make the benefits industry a better place. And you know it, I was really getting sticky and a bigger following when I posted stuff about myself, uh, in terms of my health, in terms of my fitness,
But not,
in
but
terms of
not
my
in a, but
struggles.
not in a braggadocious way though.
No,
That's much different when you're going Instagram, standing next to Jet with your shirt off and an 8-pack saying, check
nah,
me out. That's not what you were doing.
mm, no, it was like, hey man, here's how long I've been doing it, and here's the level I've reached, and it's been tough, but I'm doing things now at 63 that I didn't do in college. I mean, I'm my bench press is more than it was in college. I mean, I'm throwing weight around that I never thought I would throw around, but I'm becoming a much fitter human being, and my medical tests show it. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to illustrate to people because I thought I'll never be able to spend that amount of time working out and do my job and pay attention to my family. Well, you know what? I scheduled it on my calendar, and guess what? It works out. It
Yeah.
just, but you have to make it part of your plan. And so, and then you had a lot of people out there that were sharing, hey, I'm doing this too, and this is what worked for me. But like engaging with you, because I knew you'd hold me accountable.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's the other part of the success. I talk about working with somebody and being held accountable, and a workout buddy is fine, or a coworker is fine in terms of your LinkedIn. But I mean, you know what? You have a way of talking to me where it's like, you're not scolding me, but it's like, you want to be successful, you know what you got to do. You're
Yeah.
not doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear those comments, or,
And by the way,
yeah,
just so you know, I was not your trainer, bro. That was not your trainer. You know, you have
right,
your own
right.
people over there in the gym
No,
working on that. I,
you have a
I I
different
tend to
group.
focus on the mindset. I know mind and
Yeah.
body are one. I know some people will say that I
Hmm.
will call that out. Mind and body are one. That's
Hmm.
true. But I spend more time from afar when I'm working with somebody to get into the mindset part because I know you know how to lift weights. I know you know how to bench press, but
Hmm.
getting yourself up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, or staring at your calendar going, God, 5 o'clock, happy hour or hit that gym that I scheduled. That's a
Hmm.
battle in your mind that we go through on a daily. So when you can
Yeah.
overcome, as we call it, the shoulds, and you let the shoulds lose and the musts, right, the have to win out, then it changed the whole ball game. I agree with you. I think the biggest thing, and I'd mentioned to the questions out there, is you got to try things. And Gary Vaynerchuk, you mentioned it. If you guys aren't following him on Instagram or social media, it's Gary V Media Vaynerchuk. He's known as Gary V. He's a little brash. If you don't like the F words, don't follow him, but get through that and you can listen to him. And you hear him talking to young adults that come up to him after seminars all the time. And they're like, oh
Hmm.
man, I'm so afraid. And he answers, just do it.
Hmm.
Post the video and hit send. Because what's going to happen, right? People are going to go, hey, Kevin, good job, man. I haven't seen this from you before. You're not going
Hmm.
to get these big haters. Now, when you got millions and millions of followers like him, and by the way, he doesn't care. I just saw his post today. His
Hmm.
post today on Instagram was the 5 ways to not give a F. That's literally the post. And you can read the 5 of them that he believes. One of them is don't care what people think, right? Believe in yourself more than other people believe in you, right?
Hmm.
These are the 5 things he uses himself. So if you follow the model, just find your sweet spot. Don't become boxed into braggadocio, never politics, never religion. That's a rule. We talked about that. But don't just box yourself into business. Oh, let me tell you about, self-funding. Let me tell you what's going with captive. Let's tell you about what's going with interest rates for my mortgage buddies, right? let's talk about you, man. The best stories are authentic. It's about how did you start? What have you struggled with? Tell me about your family. And those are what I've seen come through with you from January of last year to now. And any of you could go out if you want to hit up Kevin. It's Kevin Garrett at Hub. You can see his LinkedIn. I'm sure he'd take it. You look at his posts and you can see how he navigates the professional too and the personal. It's not all just business, business, business. He doesn't just take, and you all have them, by the way. I'm not calling it out. All of our companies, Hub, the companies are represented here. They're posting up here at corporate for you. So
Mhm.
you reshare it and become little mini experts by sharing the corporate data. I know that's out there and that's fine. Sometimes you get some good data. That's their brand. That's the logo on the front, right? The name on the
Mhm.
back is your name, right? It's Lindstrom. Who is Lindstrom? I know this, but I don't know this. And the more you can get to that in your posting, I think the better off you are.
Yeah, I think commenting on, I see a lot of people who are just reposters, serial reposters,
Yep.
and they get the content you just mentioned and they repost it. And
Yep.
that's fine because you are building the hub brand, but how do you link that to yourself? And so for me, I comment on the content.
Yeah.
Here's why you want to read it. This is,
Yep.
spoiler, you're going to find out this,
Yep.
this, and this, but for the big finish, you're going to have to read the article or watch the video. It's 2 minutes out of your life that you won't regret.
Yep.
And you just got to tell them why they
Yeah.
need to look at it, why it's important to them.
Yep.
And maybe
It's good.
maybe it doesn't resonate with them, but you'll find out how many people it does resonate with by, when you get 1,000 impressions on a post.
Yep.
I stumbled into a post one time that I reposted, and it was about a sales pitch, and I got 15,000 impressions on that one post. It just
Wow.
blew my mind. I thought, why is this better
Yep.
than anything else I've ever posted? It was kind of crazy, and it was how this sweatshirt turned into a backpack,
Yeah.
and it was by one of the Gracie family, and they were just trying to create something for workout gear, but that resonated with a lot of people. Go figure. So
Oh man, it's so true. You know what my biggest post to date is there, and you've all seen it probably by now. It's probably 4 years ago. It's the girl that's a skater, and she's
mhm,
on the ramp about to drop in, and it's like Tony Hawk or whatever in the back. And this is a ramp, guys. This is like a 20-foot ramp or whatever. And she's talking to herself. I can do this. I can do this. And they're coaching her in the background, and she's literally, you see her process. This girl's like 4 or 5, and she drops in totally safe. Everyone's going crazy, right? And all I did was put my own commentary on there, right? I didn't just repost it. I put my own commentary on there, like, "Hey, if you jump, the net will appear, right? If you jump, the net will appear. What's your chance of failure if you don't try?
right.
100%." Right. So I had some unique anecdotal take, but I don't know. It's similar to you. I think I had 16, 17,000 in like 3 days. I'm like, gosh, this isn't my original content. But guess
Mhm,
what? People can see how you think. They see your commentary. They see your editorial. So I think to the people out there that are nervous about just being on camera and influencers, just going out there and saying, hey, let's start off there and let's graduate to it. But make the commitment that you're going to post something that's personal to you, that doesn't is not about self-aggrandizement, but you're going to go out there and be authentic. So
yep,
couple quick questions, and I got one other questions hitting the board. I got some carriers out here. I work with carriers and brokers and the tech
mhm.
side, so I represent all sides. I'm not loyal to one. Um, People want to know, how do we get it in front of you, right? You got a carrier, you got all kinds of carriers calling. You got everyone, the Paylocities, the Optums, you got every carrier on the. I know you're a busy guy. What do we need to do to get your attention, to get a meeting in this day and age, 2024? I know COVID and virtual and all that stuff. Give us a couple quick tips to my carrier friends out there, because they're calling our brokers just the same.
Yeah, I mean, I could have lunch and happy hour and dinner every day of the week for the entire year if I entertained everybody's invitation to get together and hear what they have to offer. And I can appreciate that as a sales professional, but I also appreciate uh, the time is at a premium. And so, you know, if you just wanted to spend 10 minutes on a Teams call, Zoom call, phone call, that's the easiest way to get in front of me. But if you want to take people out to lunch, I always tell people, hey, I'm I'm kind of busy, but the people you really want to take out to lunch are going to be my team, because when we're putting the business together and we're trying to make things happen with existing clients and new clients, I value their input. We strategize before we put every deck together for a presentation, and they're going to say, hey, so and so has been killing it for us lately, and they look really good here, and we think the product does X, Y, and Z, and but they need to know these things even more than I do, and so yeah, I'll do a Zoom call um, anytime.
How
You know,
much time? How much time? Let's be specific. I cold call you, warm call you. Maybe of a
yeah,
mutual friend. I got a good pitch,
20
and
minutes,
what is it?
20 minutes
20
or
minutes.
less.
So it's just
Yeah,
me and you. Is it
yeah,
you and other people, or is just me and you on virtual?
just me and you.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then if we want to go next level, I'll say, okay, here's what you should do. You should put together. I like webinars anymore, rather than or a lunch and learn if you want to come in and be live and meet the people. But if you want to get to me, and I'm busy and picky. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'm not elitist, believe me, because
Nope. I know.
but there are some people that I don't know that I'm going to be honest here and say, I don't know if I want to spend an hour with you at lunch. What if we have nothing to talk about? It's going to be a real agonizing 60 minutes. So if we could do a 20-minute phone call and kind of get to know one another and feel comfortable, then that's going to help me take it to the next level
Yep. Good.
because if you're going to come in and product push, I mean, you could do that in a 20-minute phone call.
Yeah. That's
And
good.
again, I got to hear what differentiates you over the partners I've got. And it's not that I'm not open to new partnerships because I don't know everything.
Yep.
And I want to make sure I'm, not missing the next great opportunity. So
Yeah.
20
That's good.
minutes, phone call, Zoom call, Teams call.
Yep. All right. So I got a couple of questions and we're gonna start wrapping up, team. So hang with us. We're almost done. So my favorite sales movie is Glengarry Glen Ross is up there in my top three. And we know that the quote, coffee is for closers,
Mm-hmm.
right? Put that coffee down. Remember the Baldwin scene? Question that came, Victoria, thank you. She says, you've been successful in your art, in your knowing the art of sales. What is your technique to be a closer? It's a great
So
question.
I like that. I like the closing question, and it's evolved over the years because when you're young in the business, they teach you these closing techniques. Ask the 5 closing questions that they can't say no to, and but that's evolved over the years to I try and soft close on the first interview when I tell people I don't even know if I can help you, honestly, and it's body language, it's my tone, how am I talking?
Yeah.
Am I wild and excited like this? But typically, I'm trying to be calm,
Yeah.
take a few pauses. And I know during this call, I've even spoken quickly at a couple of points, because you're enthusiastic about something. But you want to make sure you're heard, and you want to make sure that you you, you feel that you heard what they had to say. And
Yeah.
so and you can even repeat it back to them and say, it sounds like if we can solve these issues, um, we can probably do some work together. Is that a
Yeah.
fair statement? And I usually get, yeah, that's a fair statement. Or would you be opposed to us taking the next step? And here's what we're going to need to do to take a look at things. And because you want to find out if they're serious.
Yeah.
And if they're not serious, you could waste a whole lot of time. And believe me, I've wasted hours and hours and hours of my time in 40 years and just trying to be, a quote machine. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
let's take it out to bid and see what we can do. Well, if 5 of us go out to bid in our world with the same information and go to the same carriers, we get the same numbers, and then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, what are we going to do different than the other 4 competitors?
Yeah.
So you got to establish that before you get started, and you don't want to be one of 5. You want to be one.
I love it. I love it. My favorite closing question. So I don't know everybody on here. A lot of these are your people too. So I don't make any assumptions. I love 0 to 10. I've been asking it for years. 0 is, tell me to go jump in a lake. I'll
Mhm.
redefine 0 depending on who I'm talking to. 10 might be check an app in hand, right? We're going to go party tonight and celebrate,
Yeah.
right? Tell me to go jump in the lake. And then I
Mhm.
ask authentically 0 to 10, where are we at? And I'm trying to get a real number. A lot of people pause, but I always get a number. Like, I'd say about an 8. So that presumes that I'm not at a 10. So then the follow-up question is, what has to happen specifically in order for me to get to a 10? That's when I uncover the objection, the true remaining objection. Got to talk to my partner. You're competing with 4 other people. We are literally looking at budgets. This is going to go to committee. I'm the one that's screening the process. There's a lot more that happens after this meeting. And I'm already trying to ask those questions at the beginning, but a lot of times people hold back. They don't tell you it's going to committee. They don't tell you you're competing, even though you ask, until you can pin them down at some point and say 0 to 10. 10 is checking app in hand. 0 is go jump in a lake. You know, they're going to give you some kind of an answer. And if you're not comfortable asking, just tell them, hey, you wouldn't respect me as a consultant. You wouldn't respect me as a salesperson if I didn't ask you this question.
Yeah.
I get paid to close. Or another way to say is open relationships, right? I don't close deals, I open relationships. So if you pre-frame the question, you're more comfortable asking the 0 to 10. That's my favorite. But I agree with you. When you kind of do the takeaway at the beginning, going,
Mhm.
hey, I don't know if this is a good fit or not, but hey, we'll find out in the next half hour. If it's a good fit, great. We can move forward to the next level. It's great.
Yeah.
All right. Any parting thoughts? I always say takeaways. You got any words of wisdom? You got all kinds of people out there. We want to hear your takeaways, your little parting words of wisdom that you haven't shared with us here today as we wrap up. What would you say?
Fear not.
Fear
It's
not.
that gets in our way all the time. I mean, the only thing that separates us in terms of success, I feel, is that successful people do what needs to be done, even if they don't like doing it. And those who aren't as successful, they give into fear.
Love it.
Yeah, and we face fear every day, right? All of us do. I do, you do, everyone on this call does. But it's despite that, it's still doing what you need to do to get to the goal,
Yeah,
the gold,
it's good.
whatever it might be.
I love it, man. I love it. My last piece I would give, I got a million I could give, but this has been really fresh in my mind the last few months, especially with 2 teenagers. And I mean this from my heart. Put the damn phone down. Just quit scrolling.
Hmm.
Don't be laying in bed looking at it. Read a book. You know, if you can't fall asleep, do something different. Get off of this. The
Yeah,
dopamine fix, the effects on your brain. If you don't believe me, guys, just hit me up on Q&A. I'll send you article after article. I've been researching this. I haven't come hard in the paint yet in my coaching on this yet. I will be in the next 6 months on this topic because I have teenagers and I know the effect on them in learning, but also in the adult brain and the dopamine, the association that you have with the phones. Put the damn phone down at the beginning of the day, the end of the day. Be present with your family. Trust me, you'll never regret it. That's my takeaway. All right, man. So,
good
hey, Ken,
advice.
thanks so much. I really appreciate
Thank you,
this.
Mike.
And
It's
we
been great.
almost everybody hung in there, man. We had a big group today. We had
Yeah,
people hang all the way to the end. That's impressive.
thanks for sticking around, everybody.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot. So, we're gonna wrap up. We'll record. If anybody did not get this, the webinar should actually send you a link after the fact. If you don't get it in the next 24 hours, let me know. If you want to share it with some of your colleagues, teammates, somebody that are not here, we did record it and we'll render that. And really, so want to say thanks, man. God bless.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.